Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Healthy Innovators Live TV. My name is Barry Shrier and I'm your host. I'm the founder of Giant Health. Giant is a global community of nearly 200,000 people, everybody around the world whose business is healthcare, technology, and innovation. Every week, we bring you these episodes of Healthy Innovators Live TV, where we're bringing together a group of the most interesting and dynamic and ambitious and successful entrepreneurs and healthcare technology innovators. We're very proud of the accomplished people that we bring to you, and we're very glad to have their valuable time and contribution to these episodes. Before we begin today, I just want to thank our sponsors. We're very happy and delighted to be working with some important sponsors. Thank you to McKinsey & Company, our knowledge partner. Thank you to Vodafone Business, and of course also thank you to Barclays International Bank. We love working with you guys and all of our other media partners, and we're delighted to be continuing our collaboration with all of you. Thank you for your support. Also, for all of you visitors and viewers around the world, remember please to like this YouTube video, and we hope you'll subscribe, and we'd love to hear from you. Coming up in November is the annual Giant Health event. You can learn more about that by going to our website, www.giant.health. which according to the Financial Times is Europe's largest, most valuable annual healthcare technology event. So love to hear from all of our listeners about that event and about these videos. Anyhow, nice to see you three. Thanks very much for joining us. Hello, Moises. How are you today?
Pretty good. Very happy to be here.
Excellent. Likewise. Glad you're here. And hello, Mette. How are you doing?
Hi. Good to be here.
Good. Thank you for joining us. And likewise, Cliff, thank you very much for joining us. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. Great to be here. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Glad to have you on board. So, Moises, we want to talk about some of the biggest challenges in healthcare and in society. What's an example of one, and what are you doing in that area?
Well, I'd say perhaps one of these leading challenges could be the slow introduction of new medical devices that focus on using the latest technologies. So, for instance, surgeons, doctors, they spend decades mastering a given surgical technique, first during med school and then during their career at the operating theater.
Yes.
The thing is, this means that at hospitals worldwide, when they perform a surgery, the techniques you're using are most probably from the previous century. And we live in a world of exponential technological development, and we should take advantage of this, because using these latest technologies, we can improve these traditional techniques to basically improve the way in which we provide healthcare. And that's our goal at Drill Surgeries. We want to improve healthcare through technology. For instance, we work to improve how certain orthopedic or trauma surgeries are performed. We identify a common surgery coined as inaccurate or inefficient by some surgeons. We study them, we understand them, and then we work with surgeons from different countries to get a better glimpse at how this surgery is performed and to support us in our way to develop a new medical device to improve how this is done. In our case, we focus on using augmented reality and tracking algorithms. These two tools, these two technologies, have already showcased potential to reduce, let's say in this surgery that we are focusing at the moment. There's this surgery, it takes 90 minutes, large number of x-rays. By providing surgeons with new tools using these latest technologies, now surgeons have the potential to reduce operating time by over 50%, to reduce radiation by over 60%. And the beauty of all of this is not that we are improving how surgeries are performed, but we are reducing radiation at the operating theater, which means we are offering better care to our patients,
Yes.
which is another of the challenges.
Yes. Yeah.
We are also speeding up the operating, the surgery, which means we're speeding up the waiting list, which is again another
Yeah, no, that's very, very interesting. Thank you so much for the introduction. We do want to talk about that in more detail, but I'm very keen just to have an introductory view from you. Thank you. This theme of the challenge of increasing the speed of adoption of new technology is a very big theme that comes up quite a lot. And also, obviously, the way of enhancing the work of clinicians by way of new technology, of course, is a very powerful thing. So very keen to hear more about that. Thank you. And Mette, hello. And again, on the theme of what are some examples of big challenges in society or a big problem in healthcare that we're setting out to address, if you can give us an example of that as well, please.
So I actually think that what Moises is doing is amazing, but I think what I'm sort of looking at is something very, very small in a way, because we have, as a society, healthcare has really been based on standardization and medians. And any outliers we've had a harder time with. We love standard of care. We love things where a BMI, A1C, insulin can sort of like be taken across a population like the diabetes one. But when it comes to autoimmunity, where you have no sort of standardized care, there's no known causality, then we stumble a little bit more. And in the US, 1 in 5 was suffering from autoimmunity prior to the pandemic. Wow. But we've always known that viruses and infections were the largest trigger of autoimmune disease. We've just, in the past, it was Lyme's disease and Epstein-Barr and stuff. Now we've had 100 million people infected by a virus, and that is impacting the rise of autoimmunity quite significantly. On top of that, we have the COVID long haulers, which is estimated to be between 20 and 30 million in the US. And these diseases actually don't really require traditional standard of care. They require lifestyle intervention and a completely different mapping, because it's unknown what's going on, and it differs from person to person. And yes, there's patterns, but there's no sort of way of getting to it unless you actually look at each individual. So I think from my perspective, the biggest challenge is in healthcare is that there used to be one size fits most to one size fits one is going to be the reality. And so that's what's fascinating to me. And you know, obviously having a business where we are looking at each individual as an N of one, once you line up all these outliers, they look an awful lot alike. So I think over time, we are going to get better and better at drawing understanding from all of these unknown diseases to understand, you know, healthcare at large.
Yes.
But for right now, I think one of the biggest challenges is really that doctors and the way that we've trained physicians in healthcare are not very well equipped to actually be looking at lifestyle and coaching and some of the things that I believe will be important.
Well, thank you for sharing that. It's a very, very good point, and I agree with you entirely. I suppose you could see how over the past 100 years, the practice of medical education and the delivery of healthcare services has been trying to standardize things, but it's also obvious how that doesn't make sense. I'd like to think each of us is rather individual, and we are, I guess, fairly complicated animals as well, aren't we, from a biological perspective? And so the idea, does this relate to personalized medicine and the ability of new technologies to personalize treatments? Is that also in your area, so to speak?
Yes, very much so. Personalized medicine or personalized nutrition, however people sort of term these, is very much at the forefront of what we are looking at and doing.
Yeah.
For the population.
Yeah, I've heard that phrase a lot, and keen to learn more about that. Well, thank you very much for that. And just going around in a brief introduction, Cliff, hello. We're talking about big challenges in society, big problems in healthcare. What's an example from your perspective, and what are you guys doing in that area?
Yeah, I'll come at this from a slightly different angle, in the fact that had we been having this conversation maybe a year and a half ago, we wouldn't have even been thinking about a word called COVID, and probably none of us really knew what it was. And what that's done, in my opinion, is it's brought the best out of a medic, the best out of a clinician, and the best out of a healthcare system to keep people alive and to save lives. But then as you identify a little bit further than that, what's really happening in the background is that supply chains are being stretched beyond all expectation. Use of single-use plastics is on a level that I don't think anyone really ever thought was possible. And the manner in which vaccination programs being rolled out means that different levels of care from elective surgery and otherwise are having to be put on hold or delayed in order to run out a vaccination campaign, which is all encompassing and using, you know, every single person in the healthcare system to a larger extent. And I think the point I make is that on every single one of those levels, none of it's sustainable. So whether that's single-use plastics or whether that's the burden on the healthcare worker, you've got to start thinking about innovation centering around bringing together things like how do we automate supply chains, how do we bring together process control, how do we get the maximum from a single opportunity. Yes. And I think, you know, being quite honest about it, it's not something the medical world's ever really had to face before. It's something that industry is exceptionally good at, you know, and the Japanese car sector is just unbelievably talented at doing this. But all of a sudden, the medical world has been forced into a situation that it's perhaps not ready to accept and making decisions to embrace it. I think you've got to take your hat off to. And now you ask me, what are we doing in that space? Well, that's really the world in which we play. Is we use the moment that you create a safety event in a room to bring through a sustainability program, to transmit a data record, to implement just-in-time supply chain. So we're trying to create the most value from a clinical pathway entering from the physical into the digital world, if that makes some sense.
Totally. And I actually am loving this, because I used to say to people that they should call us Toyota Health, because I came into the space. I'm not a doctor, I'm an economist. So I've basically adapted something from an analogous field into healthcare, which is essentially agile, lean optimization applied to the human body. So you and me are doing the same thing, just in different ends of healthcare. Yeah,
well, interestingly, I'm an engineer from the automotive sector originally, so that's where I cut my teeth.
Perfect.
That makes a lot of sense, Cliff. And I certainly agree with you. Obviously, the pandemic has been a horrific tragedy and crisis for millions around the world. And it certainly has brought out the very, very best of the spirit and commitment of healthcare workers. But it has come with enormous challenges, hasn't it? And this idea of figuring out how we can lift best practice from other industries, I think is very, very important. And also what we're seeing regarding a willingness maybe to put aside a little bit of bureaucracy and paperwork and process within, for example, the regulatory environment, which we are seeing successfully around the world, and the commitment. I guess often there's this theme of moonshots, which comes up, the American 1960s concept of if you have a big focus, you can do something rather extraordinary, like send humans to the moon, which is, you know, I guess it is rather extraordinary. And it kind of points to a broader theme, which is that where there's a will, there's a way. And yet we do have an awful lot of hurdles in healthcare. What's the challenge for you guys when you compare how things are done outside of healthcare compared to how things should be done in healthcare? A famous mantra in Silicon Valley is move quickly, break things fast, and so forth and so on. I mean, in healthcare, you don't want to break things fast. You do want to move quickly, don't you? How do you reconcile these things, which are maybe doable in other industries, but actually don't work or should not be applied in healthcare?
So I guess being the US bound person here, I can start. So we started out quite traditionally, you know, solving a big problem, hoping that there'll be somebody to pay for it once we had solved it. And then we went the regular route. We went to payers to validate, like first clinical validation, then commercial validation. Once we had proved out we could save about $20,000 per participating member, we went all risk. We thought this is going to be a no-brainer. Not only are we solving a big problem that there's no solution to, because in autoimmunity, you spend 5 to 7 years undiagnosed. Then you spend time in queuing up for the rheumatologist because there's a wait list. And once you actually get into the system, specialty pharma medication, if you get there, it fails 3 out of 4. So there's really not, it's a long, lonely road, but unfortunately 75% at the other end don't really have a solution. So we thought this is going to be easy, but the payer systems and the rigor and the things that actually matter ended up taking us further and further away from not necessarily breaking things, but this short iterative loop. And so we actually went direct to consumer. We decided, you know what, there is 50 million Americans that have this problem. And while we still believe that this requires reimbursement down the road, and at that point, the payers will be the most important players.
Yes.
Up to that point, we want the entire company to be focused on the individual. We want everything from product development to marketing to sales and so on to be thinking about the individual and their needs, not about some report that needs to be 1,500 layers,
Yep.
away from the problem that we're actually solving.
Yeah, no, that's a very interesting illustration. And it's also actually, Mette, quite interesting because I think an awful lot of businesses start with a direct-to-consumer approach, and then they actually migrate more to a B2B approach based on the economic circumstances that they find themselves in and the opportunities. So interesting to hear about that journey. And Moises, what's your experience in this?
Well, I wanted to say that I really like your approach and how you structure and the strategy that you develop to grow your business. I really like it because it moves away from the norm from what's expected from the more traditional approaches. And for instance, I'd say that the medical device industry, it's mostly known and populated by multinationals like many big names that we all know about in this industry. So when it came to me and starting a team, starting a startup, I actually enjoy quite a lot learning about the startup history, the Silicon Valley culture, and from time to time we do apply the move fast, break things motto, lifestyle of these startups, but only when it comes to developing certain prototypes, because this gives us the chance to, since we work with several surgeons from different countries, to receive feedback as fast as possible. Now, the different approach that we wanted to make is that, okay, instead of us going out, investigating our own surgeries and then solving them and then trying to convince surgeons to use our new medical device.
Yeah.
Our co-founder, he's been a surgeon for a while now, almost a decade, if I'm not mistaken. He encountered this problem in a given type of surgery. It's called intramedullary nailing surgeries. Turns out his colleagues at his hospital also had the same problem, and we partnered to solve it. Now, I didn't want to start just because he said, and in this region, we saw there was a problem. So I picked up the phone and I knocked on as many doors as possible. So I ended up with around a dozen or more than that surgeons from Spain, the UK, Switzerland, Australia, telling me like, oh yeah, we actually have that problem. After spending several months doing that, it's when we went down to the piece of paper and we started drafting prototypes and receiving recurrent feedback, etc. So the way that we did it is, instead of doing market research and then finding clients, we basically found our clients, the ones that need the solution, and we are working with them to provide the solution that they want.
Yeah, so that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's such a challenge, though, isn't it? Because we often talk to a lot of hospital leaders who say that every day a lot of innovators are knocking on their door saying, hello, here's my new product, my new service, my new widget. Would you like to buy it? And the hospital leaders are holding their hand up saying, well, that's actually not a priority for us, or that's not what our geographic region is concerning ourselves with, or that's not one of the national priorities set by the government in this healthcare system. Cliff, does that relate to your area at all or not? This concept of where do you identify the need, and where is the solution coming from? Is it coming from people who just have light bulb moments and inventing products and trying to sell them, or is it coming from within healthcare, and is it clinical led?
Well, I think there's a little of both going on, really, isn't there? So thinking of it from the outside looking in, a bit about my background. I've launched a huge amount of products for global OEMs over a number of years. So I speak with a level of authority on this. Without question, the healthcare fraternity have the information to share with the innovators.
Right.
The issue is the what's in it for me moment, i.e. when you can scratch the appropriate itch, and finding that moment in time takes some strategic guidance, a little bit of luck, and an awful lot of door knocking is the reality of it. You know, in our case, we moved into COVID. We had a product solution that destroyed needles way before COVID-19. And all of our traction around the software interface was within the diabetes community in the US particularly.
Okay.
Trying to understand the timing of the events and compliance of patients. The moment COVID hit, all of a sudden we had a solution that people wanted to hear about. It wasn't new to us. It wasn't groundbreaking to us as a business.
Right.
But now the audience wanted to know more. And of course, if you go back to a pre-COVID world, mass vaccination wasn't really a thing. I know it was in pockets of Central Africa, and you could get a flu shot and all that type of thing, but not on the level that it is now. No. And that's changed the way in which we think. What that's also done is created end user engagement, because you've now got people who have exposed the frailties of their existing systems because the system itself has been stressed. So a system can quite often operate within some sort of acceptable boundary up to and including the point it's pressurized. And then the moment it's pressurized, somewhere in there, the dam will burst. And that's exactly what's happened all over the healthcare space. And it's really down to the individuals that they've managed to control and cope with it. And I don't just mean the clinicians. I mean, everything from the supply chain to the porters to the cleaning staff. It's all about the people at the moment. But that's not going to be how you get, as you will put it, moonshot innovation to break through. It's about accepting and adopting of change.
Yes.
But I think it's the same for the individual, right? Because I think a lot of individuals coming into COVID felt like they were okay. And now, you know, during a year of this, people have realized that even small underlying things like a high BMI or a little bit of cardiac, you know, issues, whatever, is not so small, right? Because all of a sudden we are seeing the magnified effect of having underlying issues. And I think that's going to fundamentally change the individual as a driver of their own health. The same way as you're seeing, it's going to fundamentally change the drivers of the hospital systems and physicians on driving the logistics side, right?
That's a very good point. It is all about people, isn't it? And this theme that you have mentioned, Cliff, the theme of end user engagement is just so profound. Obviously, we understand that the tradition of healthcare around the world is, in fact, a tradition of sick care. You only call the doctor traditionally when you're unwell. You go to the ambulance or you go to the hospital when you're unwell. But that's not sustainable in any way, is it? In terms of the economies around the world, the exploding cost of delivering healthcare, the new chronic challenges that we have, and so forth. So this theme of what you just mentioned, it's all about the individual, and the theme of end user engagement is just so very, very important. Mette, I was a little curious about that from your own perspective. Is it not the case that an awful lot of people actually are not that concerned about their health? We all probably eat a little bit too much pizza, drink a little bit too much beer. We don't exercise as much as we should. Is technology a opportunity to nudge us and to encourage us to concern ourselves with wellness rather than waiting until we're unwell?
So fundamentally, I don't believe that technology is the solution to really anything. Sounds awful to say, having being in this industry, but I do think that technology is a great way of powering change, and I think that it's a great interface, and it allows us, in our case, so we have a company where we reverse autoimmune disease through identifying specific triggers, and in order to do so, we need computers. Because humans, no matter how good of a physician or coach or nurse you are, you can't look at what people eat and do and in your brain figure out if it's 20 minutes or 7 hours or 72 hours or 3 weeks since something had a piece of chicken, right? So we need computers to actually find the causality and the patterns between what people do and how they feel. So as a company, we basically take body signaling and we turn that noise into understanding. Nice. So you can almost say that we're replacing traditional lab work with computer power. And in order to then use those machine learnings for anything, because if we only use the technology and push things through an app, I think we would be a failure. But we then take those machine insights and we turn them into human behavior using human health coaching.
Brilliant.
And I think that's in the intersection between technology and delivery where we have actually come quite a long way. In the early days of all the diabetes delivery, it was very much about how much can technology do. You wear a Fitbit, you walk 10,000 steps, you get like a ping, and you're supposed to drink more water. Yep. I'm sorry, but our data now tells us that when we ping people, if people don't react to the first 1 or 2 pings, then you've actually lost them because they've completely stopped listening. So instead, we've dialed back a lot of this sort of like technology notches and stuff and actually gotten to a place where we call it pay attention technology, but where we foster a different experience for the individual in their day-to-day so that we don't have to have people actually use technology forever. We use it similar, like you have your appendix taken out, you get released from the hospital. This is really, you have an autoimmune problem. In many cases, people have, several autoimmune conditions. Some even have organ involvement by the time they see us. We dial that back. We're able to reverse their disease symptoms. In some cases, get them back to full kidney function. And then they should be able to know their blueprint. They should be able to know these are the 1 or 2, 3 things that I need to be careful of and do. And if it keeps people out of the wheelchair, out of the hospital, or whatever it does, that's something that people can actually do. What the problem is that healthcare has been so convoluted and so hard for the individual to navigate that they had 100 different rules and they were intermittently cheating on all of it because they didn't know what worked for them. And that's what technology is good at. Technology at scale is fundamentally able to do diagnostics in a way that no human could.
Yeah, that sounds quite interesting. Like I kind of could picture it like the technology is not as applied in the solution. Like technology is not the solution, but it's the tool that you need to keep track and monitor the patient and provide a tailored and personalized care to these patients so that the decisions that we as individuals make are as tailored and as informed as possible.
Totally.
Wow.
Does that relate to your business, Moises, in terms of the priority of using technology for collecting and managing information and providing, what would you call it, a human dashboard, so to speak?
Well, so since one of the core technologies we work with is augmented reality and tracking algorithms, this way we can actually provide the surgeons that are performing these orthopedic surgeries with all the information that they need to do their best work yet. So nowadays, if you want to know what's happening inside of your patient's leg, for example, you need to shoot a bunch of x-rays, and that will provide you a 2D image, and that's what you see. Now, by implementing these technologies, we can now tell the surgeon how the 3D image of what's going on inside the leg looks.
Brilliant.
We can tell him, okay, this is your position in respect to the leg. And we can actually guide the surgeon without the need of x-rays to the exact spot where they need to perform the surgery, which I believe it's outstanding because now instead of spending 30, 40 minutes shooting x-rays to the patient and to the medical personnel that assist in this process, you're using a piece of technology that in 5 minutes it's telling you, okay, you need to move a bit more to in the X direction, a little bit up in the Y direction, turn your surgical knife 20 degrees up, and that's the right spot to finish the process.
Brilliant. No, absolutely magnificent. I certainly admire what you guys have accomplished. And of course, these things weren't possible, were they, 10 years ago? And things are developing exponentially, which I suppose is a good in terms of what you mentioned before, Mette, of the ability to scale these solutions so that we can reach wider audiences or raise the healthcare services we're providing to a larger number of people at a controllable cost level. We want to talk also, you guys, about your own personal experiences and what led you to where you are today. And also, there's an awful lot of technology entrepreneurs and early stage healthcare companies who dial into these episodes every week. So everybody loves to hear about how you have been so successful and accomplished the things that you're doing, and any challenges that you'd like to share with us. So Cliff, tell us a little bit, very briefly, please, about your business and how you got to where you are now, and any challenges or things you'd like to share with our audience.
Okay, yeah, no problem at all. What I would say is that anyone who's stepping into the world of having something that they believe in is you've got to stick with the journey to the end state. And it's as they say, it's darkest before dawn.
Yes,
and it's regularly pretty dark. So you've got to work through those barriers. In the case of Needlesmart, I mean, we started life as a physical product. We started out with unique hardware. We've got a number of patents across the portfolio.
Okay.
And everything we did in the hardware space was around destroying a hypodermic needle of different sizes, different types.
Okay.
Then really, I guess the serendipity is that about 2 years ago, I started to put the link together between a moment in time and how much value you could generate from that moment in time. So there is something that happens every time an injection is given, and that is that the needle finds its way to a waste stream. Very obvious, very straightforward thing. We put something in the middle of that means there's no longer a needle. We destroy it. It doesn't exist anymore. That itself offers the opportunity to look at things like sustainability programs and carbon reduction, direct reduction in needle stick injuries. But really then what we brought through in our thinking was that is a very important moment in time. It's as close to the injection as you can realistically get without physically being able to transmit the data as you inject the individual.
Right.
So we bring together clinical information on an event. We bring together information on the individual. Then as the clinician in the physical workflow destroys the needle, that is the system trigger within our software to transmit that data to its next destination, a secure cloud. For example, that's then in our world is a neutral record, data agnostic. So it's got multiple purposes. So that's where we start to think about supply chain and digital passporting or straight to EMR. But from our point of view, it is something that is in the physical workflow, so really easy to adopt, removes a lot of administration pain, and introduces efficiencies into the system that really aren't there at the moment. Now, you talk about how do you get there? Well, everyone's journey is going to be different. There's no two people. There isn't a recipe that works for everyone, and I'm sure that there's 1,000 books that will tell you there is. But the way in which you get there is the ability to adapt and overcome, and find a way to go around a problem. So
yes,
I'm sure that everyone on this call has got shared experiences of finding it very difficult to work with a healthcare system. So then you have to find a way to engage the end user and then come back into the healthcare system from the other side. The output will be the same, but fundamentally, the route you planned on going down is not the route that you've ended up taking. In our case, we've always known that we could do something serious and significant with sustainability.
Yes.
The COVID pandemic is what's created that audience.
Sure.
Because of the sheer volume of single-use plastics in circulation. And I think it's easy for us to just polarize ourselves on the medical space at that point. But you've got to think that plastic's used all over the world in other products. So that means that it's become a shortage. It's in short supply. It's a commodity base. Everything else that's plastic becomes either not available or more expensive. So you see there's a circular economy starts to evolve. So the lessons I push forward are really straightforward. Get really, really good people around you. Always get someone who knows more than you know. That is a mantra that I live by. And in many pictures, that's not difficult to achieve.
No, absolutely. We hear that a lot, and I think that's just fundamental, isn't it? It's a huge challenge, but it's fundamental. Moises, does that echo with your own experience?
I'd say so. Yeah. Although when it comes to my own experience and some of the challenges that we experience, etc., I wanted to take a different approach. Like instead of talking about how we focus on developing our product, for instance, as
Sure.
I've mentioned it a bit in the past, or how we target our end user, etc. So I launched Drill Surgeries with the goal of improving healthcare through technology. I've been around hospitals for most of my life for different reasons, and this is a mission very close to my heart. Now, I founded this startup when I was around 19, 20 years old, so I was still at university, and I launched this project from my college dorm with the support from a series of surgeons with whom I co-founded the company. But I was said to be the public face and the leading brain in terms of the research of this company. So I come from a scientific background. I have a master's degree in physics. And medtech, in the end, was a bit of an uncharted territory for me. I had experience in technology, but not so much in applying it to medicine. So I wanted to access an industry conquered by big multinationals, and we were just small fish in the pond.
Yes.
Kind of thing. So that's why, as I was mentioning before, we try to create new strategies in the way in which we do our work. The main obstacle that I found at the time is that I was young. And the people in my industry were more experienced and, we could say, wiser, to be formal and educated. So it's time I entered one of these meetings with my suit on, my hair gelled back, and I started talking about augmented reality or these algorithms that I started developing on my whiteboard at uni. And I was telling them, like, if we apply this into the surgery, we can reduce radiation, we can speed up the operating time. Well, we can save money to hospitals, etc. Well, it wasn't received well. So if I heard anything at all, especially at the beginning, it was, we have it covered, son. This one actually was a bit tough to hear. So they said, like, we have it covered, son. You focus on your studies. And
oh, dear.
So life's a bit of a roller coaster. And I'm not saying that I should have set my studies aside. In the end, I finished my master's from a quite reputable university in the UK, the University of Liverpool.
Hooray.
But I found a way to manage both things. And through my passion, etc., it turns out, bit by bit, I started winning some startup competitions. And almost 3 years after that now, we're in a position in which we count with our own team of people at our own offices. We count with aerospace engineers working on hardware prototypes, software engineers developing these algorithms further. And we are actually now raising our first round of investment.
Brilliant. Oh, Moises, that's an amazing story, and congratulations on what you've accomplished. It is a recurring theme, and I think, obviously, Cliff, you echoed that a little bit. The themes of, number one, the enormous challenges that you encounter, and the emotional experience of how often it is so very dark just before sunrise, and the challenges that you mentioned as well, Moises, of the how do you say it? The establishment, so to speak, the people who are comfortable with things as they are and who are not necessarily open to innovation and to change. I guess that's good in healthcare. I'm glad most clinicians are fairly conservative, radical people. On the other hand, there's the challenge of getting them to work with you and to consider adopting innovation, which obviously I think we see everywhere. How about for you, Mette? Tell us a little bit, please, just about how you got to where you are.
So for me, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I sold my first company 20 years ago. So to a large extent,
when you were 9 years old.
Clearly.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm actually in a position where I'm 45. I'm healthier in my 40s than I was in my 20s and my 30s.
Wow.
Because I was unfortunately diagnosed with my first autoimmune condition when I was 14. I spent the first half of my 20s in and out of the ER. After getting my first real scare in my mid 20s, I really started going downhill quite fast, and so by 27 I was unable to walk up a flight of stairs.
Oh my gosh.
30, I had 6 autoimmune conditions and was shooting myself with biologics and really setting out to be a chronic disease patient. And then about 10 years ago, my doctor's team, and as you can imagine, anyone who's chronically ill, you have doctors everywhere. And my UCLA cardiac team called me and told me they had great news. And upon arriving at the hospital, I was told I wasn't going to die in the quote unquote immediate future, which fostered the question for me, what are we going to do about my process? And my doctor didn't even hesitate. He told me that they were happy with my numbers. And as I said earlier, I'm an economist by training, and that was completely unacceptable. And so from my perspective, it really came down to I needed to get some sort of control. I clearly didn't think that I was going to be able to reverse anything, but by essentially applying process optimization, back to your point earlier, I was able to, in 5 months, prove I wasn't a cardiac patient, and I had done weekly EKGs, blood thinners, cholesterol lowers since I was 24. And because I didn't know anything about healthcare, I thought, hey, if I could get rid of that, I can probably get rid of all of it. 16 months later, I had normalized my blood work, reversed all my disease symptoms, tapered myself off all my medications.
Wow.
And was really thinking my doctors were going to be applauding me. Went back to the hospital with a computer under my arm. Nobody wanted to look at my data. And they even had the audacity to say, well, in that case, you can't have been sick in the first place because you have chronic diseases that are irreversible.
Oh my God.
So the US is a litigious society. So it was very easy. I said, you can have it one of two ways. Either I'm going to go out of here accepting that it was all in my head, but then you have to clean the EHR. That will help me get a much lower insurance premium. Or I was sick for 20 years and you have to accept that there's a way around it. And so initially I had just started another company. I was building something else, but this thing that took a couple of decades out of my life really ate away at me. And so about 5 years ago, I had taken 33 people through the same process as myself. And I thought if I could take 33 different autoimmune diseases at different stages and reverse them, I can probably protocolize this and figure out how to actually do it at scale. So, over time, it really has been sort of the tenaciousness that have gotten us to where we are.
Yes.
Initially, we did not speak the language of the physicians. Today, we are doing trials with UCSF, Mass General, Northwell, even the NIH. So we've come a long way from being these outsiders that had this sort of novel idea that, to your point, Moises, is, we're really happy that you helped yourself, sort of, okay, go away now, to actually being acknowledged. And for us, it was really about the clinical journey. Once you could prove it out, and we're a data-driven model, right? So we don't do anything without having the data. And we can actually today show causalities between different autoimmune diseases and the organ involvement and stuff that is not even mentioned in medical literature, because we have a completely different kind of data set on the individual.
Yes.
So from it was a personal journey turned into sort of a mission. And luckily for me, back to, the points that we heard earlier, it really comes down to team. Yes. So we don't have anyone on our team delivering care that have not reversed autoimmunity in the same way as I have. Everything from our chief medical officer to all of the coaches that are interacting with our end users are all people who've gone through this transformation themselves.
Yes.
And as much as people say, is that really necessary once you actually nail it? And I said, well, the reality is that our biggest obstacle is that when people have been sick with autoimmunity for a decade or two, is actually getting to that place where you dare get your hope up. And it's a lot easier if the person on the other end of the line, because all of us is virtually telehealth, right? If that person actually understands you just intuitively. And so we really try and meet people where they are.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's why Mount Sinai last year reached out to us. So in May of last year, they came to us and said, we're starting to see all of these new clients. We do not know why and when and how, but it looks autoimmune. It was dysautonomia, it was myositis. And today we know them as COVID long haulers, but in the spring of last year, it was just a surge in these unexplained things. And so we started working with them. We're now a preferred partner for all of their COVID long haulers. And we were able to adapt our autoimmune protocol to essentially improve in all of the 10 domains for the COVID long haulers. So that is a major change, obviously, for us. But it's also been able to prove out that, to a large extent, the COVID long haulers are really an acceleration of pre-autoimmunity, which gives probably more insight into autoimmunity than anything before it, right? So to a large extent, all of this comes together because we want to introduce preventative rheumatology. If you went to a doctor today with a cardiac issue, nobody would blink at the fact that they would tell you to change diet, change lifestyle. But when it comes to rheumatology, we are way behind.
That's a very, very good point. Look, Mette, thank you so much for sharing your story, which is quite impactful. And congratulations on your tenacity, but obviously congratulations to all three of you, because we know how challenging it is to launch new ventures and to innovate in the healthcare sector. And yet these things are so important. And Mette, what you were just mentioning about the, what do you want to call it? I think pivot is the wrong word, but the applicability of your business and your model and the systems and services you've created to something which you weren't thinking about obviously 3 or 4 years ago, which is long COVID. It's an amazing story, and I can imagine that we'll see a lot of that in the future. So thank you once again for sharing that. Look, I'm very sorry to say that we've run out of time today. Obviously, it'd be absolutely fabulous if we could continue this discussion for another hour, and I would absolutely love it. But we're going to have to wrap up now. So what we're going to do, of course, in our TV show at the bottom is we'll have your names and your job titles and your companies and your websites. We absolutely encourage everybody who is watching this episode to reach out to you guys. If you guys are looking to recruit or looking for investors or looking for opportunities to expand internationally or conduct new trials, please make sure that you mention that to our community. We're very, very happy to draw lots of connections there. But Mette, thank you for joining us, and it's been great to have you on board. Likewise with Cliff, and likewise with Moises. Love to hear your stories, and really, really appreciate you giving your valuable time to us and helping us to advance the conversation about healthcare, the challenges with technology and innovation, and brilliant case studies, which I think will be very informative and inspiring for our audience. So thank you very much. Really appreciate that. Once again, this has been this week's episode of Healthy Innovators Live TV. My name is Barry Shrier, and of course, I represent Giant Health. We're a global community of nearly 200,000 people around the world whose business is healthcare and technology and innovation. We'd like to thank our sponsors once again. That's McKinsey & Company, who are our knowledge partners, Vodafone Business, and Barclays Bank International. We love working with our sponsors and all of our other media partners, and we're grateful for your support and looking forward to further collaborations. For all of our viewers around the world, remember please to go to the Giant website, www.giant.health, where we invite you to engage with us. If you'd like to apply to be on this episode of a future episode of Healthy Innovators TV, you're welcome to contact us. And again, for all of our viewers, a reminder, please click on the subscribe button, click on the like button. We'd love to get your support. We really hope that you'll be engaging with our interesting and dynamic and successful and impressive, accomplished presenters today. Thank you to Cliff and Moises and Mette. We invite all of our viewers to engage with you guys to grow the community, improve the network, and help you guys with your businesses. So once again, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Barry.
Thank you.
Thank you.